So, how to identify a successful blockchain business. Now, this is a non-technical, very kind of high-level speculative talk about how to identify a successful blockchain business. So if you are super technical, or you're a VC, or someone else which has a huge amount of experience in investing, then this is going to cover a lot of the foundation and fundamental stuff that you've already looked at and you probably already know. But the idea here is to get everyone up to speed, and then I'll spend some time towards the end of this to allow people to ask questions. A quick overview on me. I'm a founder of Atlas Neue, where we invest in early stage blockchain businesses. So it's pretty pivotal for us to be able to identify what a successful one looks like. For this, specifically, we're going to be focusing on long-term investment rather than day trading, because obviously it's easy to look at graphs and say, hey, this is going to spike and this is going to be good. What I'm going to focus on is how to identify the businesses which are already about to ICO, have ICO'd, and whether or not you should even invest your valuable energy in thinking about investing in them. So why should you care? So we're at an event which is called the Crypto Investor Show, and I'm talking about blockchain. Fundamentally, without blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies do not really function well. Cryptography has been around for a very long time in the form of SSL certificates and otherwise. So by understanding the underlying core of blockchain technology and what a blockchain business should be able to show you before you consider investing will give you a chance of actually investing in something which is likely to moon rather than something which is just going to give you either a short-term return or ultimately a big loss. So again, simplified, blockchain technology is simply a big database that has secure recordings that no one controls. It has a consensus and everyone looks after it. So what is a blockchain business? A blockchain business is a business that utilizes this technology to serve people or users. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be infrastructure. It doesn't necessarily have to already build on top of an existing infrastructure. You can take any market and any industry and implement blockchain technology and token economics to create something valuable and something useful. So ultimately, I like to use this as a definition. If it utilizes blockchain technology to serve, then it's genuinely a good blockchain business. And then what is cryptocurrency? Now, there's a very high-level technical definition I could give, but ultimately, cryptocurrency is a byproduct of blockchain technology, which is designed to incentivize economics in some way or another. People have to support the networks, and that's all that really matters with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Tokens and coins exist to support the network, nothing else. The network could be an infrastructure, it could be a payment gateway, it could be anything. It could even be a platform where the miners on the network are just normal people. You don't have to dedicate power or anything else, and that cryptocurrency is just an incentivization mechanism for high-level game theory. So this is what everyone wants. They want Lambos on the moon. Maybe not one like this, but I thought the picture was quite nice. So ultimately, to become an astronaut, you need to identify 5 very simple things before you invest in a blockchain business. These might be things that you already know or you've never heard of, but again, we'll keep it quite straightforward. So the blockchain baseline. Now, this is the kind of 5 things I'd consider looking at before I even turn around and say, should I invest or should I not invest in said business? Now, if a blockchain business does not have a decent website, then you're in trouble, because Solidity, as a programming language, is high-level JavaScript. If someone cannot take that and put together a simple JavaScript website or something in React or something which is incredibly low-level, then you are in trouble, because ultimately, smart contracts are tricky. Right? So if they can't put together a decent website and explain to you what they're doing, then don't invest in the first place. There's a lot of businesses which fail on this, and it's not even worth looking at. It doesn't have to be a piece of art, but it has to fundamentally be useful for people to understand what they're doing. A technical white paper is also good, because a lot of businesses right now will either copy and paste from everyone else's technical white paper, or they will write something which doesn't have any value. Now, you don't need to be super technical to understand this, which is why I put bonus points for a light paper. Because a light paper is essentially designed for normal people, like me and you, to turn around and to understand that this is what they're doing and this is the mission they're trying to solve. And you notice that a lot of very clever businesses, like Polkadot and otherwise, are creating light papers which are super useful. A realistic roadmap. Can they deliver what they're saying they're going to deliver? Has anyone turned around and said this is impossible? Because unfortunately, a lot of what's happening right now, some of it is impossible. Some of it just is not in the realm of possibility within physics, mathematics. There are some high-level functions and equations which cannot be solved. And if that's the case, then ultimately they don't have a business model in the first place. A bespoke wallet or client. This should be, honestly, the biggest warning sign or indicator. If they don't have something secure where you can store the currency that you're buying from them, then that's a big, big problem. Because you can't trust exchanges, you can't trust everything else. You need something that you can control and you have access to. Now, if they cannot provide you with that, then you should never invest. And ultimately, do they have blockchain-related teams and advisors? The blockchain space has been around for so long now that you should be able to get clever people from around the space to be involved in your business. Now, if you can't, ask yourself why. Because ultimately, these people are interested in exciting projects. Anyone who's been in the blockchain space is so excited to see mass adoption that they want to jump on projects which are cool and are going to ultimately keep growing the adoption curve for blockchain technology. If they have no one which has any experience in that, then that's a really clear warning sign. Strong community. So we've talked about networks and essentially how cryptocurrency supports said networks. Now, if the community around what you're looking to invest is not strong, then don't invest. Because a network needs that community. And ultimately, more than that, if the project is open source or needs like additional dev resources, then the community will support that. So businesses which have an incredibly strong community are the businesses which are going to grow and they're going to do really well. If they do not have a strong community, then ask yourself why. Is it because it's not a community project? Or is it because they haven't put the time or effort into doing so? Or purely because no one is interested, which again is a clear warning sign. A realistic roadmap. So if the project is never delivered, then the business is worthless. So the inflation of said coins and said kind of cryptocurrency is meaningless. If you're a day trader, it's fantastic because you can, again, watch graphs, look at what happens, and then you can make some quick money. But if you want that Lambo on the moon, then the reality here is that you have to be able to look at their roadmap and understand what they're delivering, when they're delivering, and why. Purely because if you invest early and you look at the stages they're supposed to deliver, you notice spikes in said currency alone because the cryptocurrency is backed by the business. And therefore, if they deliver and their proof of concept or anything else that's coming out is on time, then that makes a very big difference. And are they reliant on other technology? So a lot of interesting businesses at the moment will turn around and they will say, I'm implementing X, and we'll do that when Y is released. Well, what is Y? If you're looking for a secure identity system and you're planning to run off something like Keybase or Uport or otherwise, is that in a situation where that can integrate with what you're doing? And if it's in a situation where it can integrate, will they integrate with you? If they won't, then ultimately you have a foundational problem because you have to build two businesses. And building two businesses is bad because you have a poor allocation of resources and you won't deliver one clear or one strong product in the first place. And a viable product. This is something that isn't really talked about in the blockchain space at all. Are you solving a problem for other people in the space or people? Because if you're not, what are you doing? The reality is that unless someone wants what you're building, it does nothing. And that becomes a problem because why invest into something that won't be adopted? And ultimately, that's not good for your investment. So you have to identify what's the problem they're going to solve. QuantStamp is a good example of something where they've turned around and they said, well, we see an infrastructure problem with smart contracts and we're going to solve that. Now, that's a clear problem that everyone has. Now, whether they identify that's a problem or not almost doesn't matter because it will solve such a big pain. But there are other businesses that are claiming pains exist that don't, and no one can identify them. And yet, somehow the currency increases and rises in value. That's day trading and that's a long-term problem because when that crashes, it won't go anywhere. And that's your investment lost or worse, unrecoverable. A brand identity I like to talk about purely because there's a lot of interesting things that have happened here. Like you hear a lot of businesses that add the word Bitcoin into things or add the word ETH something or kind of piggyback off the success of other people. Now, that's detrimental because purely you're trying to target people who are naive in the space and they think that these words make your business good. Now, if you can't turn around and say, I'm building this and this is different because of these reasons and it's useful, again, really big problem because just having the word, just being called Bitcoin Coliseum does not necessarily mean that you should be a fantastic investment for people to make. So I would encourage people to look for brand identity as well. And public presence. Did you notice that when people started talking about Bitcoin, Litecoin, IOTA, NEO, again, none of this I really endorse, but the price moved. And the pure reason the price moved is because people understand it exists. And people are willing to talk about it. And they're willing to talk about the good and bad points. Now, in any scenario, public presence is almost always a good thing. Because if you address the bad points, then they're usually fixed. Or someone will turn around and they will start to either reshape the way you're thinking because of misconception, or, again, apologize for the way they've implemented something. Public presence is almost always a strong indicator of a blockchain business worth investing in. Public presence could be the BBC News. It could be Reddit. It could be anywhere where there are people that need to be told about what they're doing. Now, if it has no public presence, that's fine. There's a lot of underground projects that are doing really well. I could name hundreds, and I think that they're very clever, But this is another good indicator, because if they are starting to have a public presence, then it kind of goes backwards in that chain. The community is likely to be good, it's likely to be stronger, and they're likely to take better steps towards improving and making sure that their product and their business is something useful and, again, has long-term viability. Now, in my opinion, if you take these very simple steps, you're going to get much closer to having this Lambo on the moon. Day trading is a great way of doing so. Unfortunately, for most of us, we don't have time and energy to do that. I don't fancy myself as a trader. I like the idea that if I invest in a decent blockchain business, whether that's as a VC or as a long-term investor, then I can turn around and say, well, I know my investment is safe purely because the business in question is taking the right steps to do the right things to deliver in the future and therefore add value to the people that they serve. Now, if they can't do that, then I'm not going to get that Lambo on the moon, and I'm going to be really upset. So this is the fundamental framework that I'd invite you to look for and look at before you even considering investing in a business. And remember, as Stefan said earlier, we're at day one, minute one of blockchain. There really is no bad time to turn around and start investing now. Yep, millionaires have been made, millions have been lost, and there are a few billionaires in the world from this, but that's not going to change. We can turn around, and some of us in this room can become millionaires and billionaires. We just have to be willing to turn around and identify what the people previously identified in these businesses like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, or maybe some of the other kind of like blockchain businesses that are doing well, and be willing to invest in them with a kind of like long-term focus and goal. And if you want any more information on this, we've got the London Ethereum meetup, where we invite people who are using Ethereum technology or other clever businesses in the blockchain space to build and to create awesome products to come and speak. It's quite technical, so if you're a technical person, you'll love it. If you want to see how technical it is, we have a YouTube channel as well, which you can check out. You can see interesting videos there from Polkadot, like there's a talk from Vitalik as well. There's a lot, so go crazy. If you want to get in touch with Atlas Neuer because you have a clever blockchain business or you're an investor, then feel free to email over there at memo@. And ultimately, if you want to tweet me, I have spelt my own name wrong because I'm an idiot. But it's kind of like that, but the S and the U are swapped round. And yeah, that's everything from me. I've kept it purposely short to see if there's any kind of questions that want to be answered. So yeah, do we have any questions in the audience? Is there a microphone hanging around? There is no microphone. Oh, wait. De nada. What main vehicles do I use for my research? Into the businesses that we invest in as investors, or for kind of like personal investment? Okay, so obviously we use things like Crypto Compare and other bits and pieces because it's a fantastic resource. I would encourage people to use things like Crypto Compare purely to see where the market cap of said coin or token is anyway, because some people speculate on low price tokens to hit $1,000, and if they were to do so, they'd be worth more than any market and any industry in the world. There's interesting things you can look at. So Reddit is a great place because you can see who's talking. And there's a website called coinshilling.com, and what that does is that curates all of the threads related to what the currency someone is talking about on Reddit, and you can see whether or not there's kind of people in syndicates or people trying to move forward in a negative way. You have to remember that the market is unregulated, and so insider trading is a very real thing. So the more you can kind of get on top of it with things like coin shilling, kind of like Crypto Compare, ultimately look at kind of where people talk. Telegram is a great place as well. Yeah, Telegram's fantastic. I would actually encourage you to try and find and join these syndicates that people join on Telegram, not in any way to join and invest in the syndicates, but to see what these people are trying to like pump to the moon, because then you can avoid that like the plague, because all of those things are useless. And if you try and jump into these pump and dump things, you will always be the person that gets screwed over. But join them to see what's happening and to try and identify why these things are going up and down. Usually, if something has a very small amount of tokens and a very low market value, you have to question why they've done that. And some ICOs purely, and token generation events purely do that in order to jump on these pump and dump schemes to, get people in trouble. But simple, like Reddit, CoinShilling, and Crypto Compare are very simple resources to get anyone started and to just monitor things from there. Perfect. Any more questions?
Can you give us a few more websites that are good to do research with?
Websites that are good to do research with. So if you're interested in doing, what type of research?
Well, we're talking about identifying successful blockchain businesses.
Okay, so CoinMiso is a good one that was talked about earlier. Ultimately, I would follow the people who in the industry are very clever and what they're actually... So people like Vitalik are good to follow and to see what they're saying, purely because he's such a visionary in the field that if he turns around and says something and you can identify that in another business or other people are taking his advice, that's likely to do really, really well. I'd also encourage to do the same. I'd follow thought leaders rather than websites because, again, you can't turn around and say that these websites are not self-interested actors in this game. A lot of them are turning around, they could be holding said tokens or said coins and they want to inflate the value, or they could have been paid to inflate said value. I mean, ultimately, if you're something like, take an example of, say, Tron, and you have billions, there's nothing to turn around and stop you paying all of these self-interested parties to support you, to make you even more rich as a self-interested party. But listening to the thought leaders themselves, they have nothing to gain. As a self-interested party, all they care about is their brand. They care about how they appear to the world and whether or not people will trust them. And so they give you a very cold, honest truth that's useful. So I would turn around and say, more so rather than trying to follow websites and what other people are saying, try and follow the thought leaders and the ones who are looking towards a decentralized future, because they have nothing to gain from turning around and ruining their vision. Any more questions? Pardon?
It's on.
Oh, so Vitalik's great. Gavin Wood, Vitalik Buterin, I mean, the founder of Ethereum, he's great. Gavin Wood is another great one. Fabian Vogelsteller, the creator of the ERC20 token, again. Look for the people who had an impact in the space and then look at what they're saying. Interestingly, when you start to follow these thought leaders, they talk about other clever people in the space as well. So there's a lot of undervalued people with great opinions that are linked to these people that do really well, and they name a lot of names. I suppose the best place to start is the founding Ethereum team. The core of that is very kind of like true. It's very pure. They're very interesting in listening to alone. And then again, they usually have a lot of good things to say about other developers in the field that are doing separate projects, like EOS and Neo, that they have good words to say about. So see who they talk about and then follow that. But I mean, personally, you can never really go wrong with the Ethereum founding team.
Hi there. Wanted to ask you, I see nearly 68 new companies have came to this exhibition. Can you please let us know that why all the top 50 companies have now been part of this exhibition?
I suppose because they've already raised their money. So interestingly enough, once you've raised your money and you've done an ICO and you're in a position where you have hundreds of millions, you should be focusing on your product. You really shouldn't be focusing on doing too much about kind of like raising money. So the people here right now are those that are raising money. So at this stage, you have to turn around and you have to invest in your market to create the community that will invest in you and will follow you long term. Now, if you're already one of the top 50, then turning around and saying, right, we have 300 mil, should we just go and talk? In fact, I look at that as a very good sign because they're not going around, they're not trying to play token economics to raise the value of their currency. They're turning around and they're saying, well, we need to build a product. But again, take that very sparingly because you can't guarantee that they are trying to build said product. They could be on an island somewhere right now, with Lambos. So it becomes a weird paradox. You have to turn around and say, the projects that I believe in are doing well, and you have to be hopeful. And if there's other information that turns around and says otherwise, listen to that. But yeah, I think that's a very simple explanation for why I believe they're not here, but I'm not them or their CEO, so I can't guarantee that.
Another thing which probably myself or everybody else would wonder is that you see Bitcoin price jumping up and down $2,000 in one day.
Yeah.
What's the explanation to that? What's going on?
So It depends when it jumps up and down $2,000, for example. So if it was at 17, it jumped up to 19, that is a percentage increase, is a lot, but it's not astronomical. So you can turn around and assume that in the same way that any market moves, the market is moving positively because people are buying and people are holding, no one's selling. And people who are selling, they want to sell for a higher value. That's not, I wouldn't say that's massively unusual. And you have to remember that there's a lot of buzz around this. And when the Bitcoin market price started to do this, could you walk on the streets without hearing the word Bitcoin? Could you watch the news? Could you turn around and look through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything else and not see the word Bitcoin? Remember that most markets in the world work in the same way that the crypto market works. Ultimately, when people become aware and they think there's money to be made, they put more money in. And when people get scared, they take their money out. So bullish and bearish markets still apply here, very much so. Sometimes it gets very bullish, like the situation you've described, but I would be much more worried about the scenario you've described if it was something which was valued at, say, $500 one day, and then by next week it was $2,500, because that would spark concerns which would almost indicate insider trading or some kind of market manipulation, which unfortunately is not regulated right now, but should be.
When some coins, they say that they're going to actually release certain ICOs and certain deadlines, when those deadlines aren't met, is there an agency or company you can actually report those scams or dates that are delayed?
Is that because they've not met the deadlines purely because they haven't raised the floor of their funds?
Yeah.
So the issue is that's more, it's almost like desperation. So you can't really report that because ultimately the way that they're raising funds, as long as they've done KYC, AML, it's just classed as a reverse liquidation event. So you can't turn around to a financial conduct authority and say, look, they've said that they'd stop now, but they're still raising money. Because ultimately, if they've said, this is the floor we want to reach, we haven't reached it, we're going to try again for another week to see if we can reach it. You know, I almost feel like you can't punish people for that. In the same way that if you went to a VC and you turned around and said, I want to raise 5 million, and you only managed to raise 3, and you say, well, my business can't go ahead unless I raise 5 million, and you turn around and say, well, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to continue raising. For me, I think it's just the mindset, and I think we have to get away from the idea that sometimes money is evil, and it's very easy to get into that with cryptocurrency purely because of the way the market is moving. I do agree that there could be a problem and there could be some kind of underlying malicious actions there, but I feel that being optimistic, there's not. It's just people turning around and saying, I am passionate about X project, I'm upset not everyone else is, let's see if we can push it over the line. Would you say that's a fair response?
Yeah, it's just like, because I've experienced where certain dates have actually been delayed for like 5 months, and I'm just thinking, okay,
scam.
Yeah, and there's actually...
That's a problem.
There's actually no team to actually respond, so...
Yeah, I mean, that screams scam. If there's no team and no one cares, ultimately, if you're raising money, you should be at the beck and call of the people who are investing in you. Like, they're your lifeline, they're your heartbeat, they're your oxygen. You're not doing that, then scam. Yeah, so I agree with you there. Unfortunately, it depends how they've raised said money. Like, if it's in a decentralized manner, who are you going to report? There's been a really interesting instance, I can't remember the name of the company, but they ran away with 8 figures, and then when people went to click on their website the next day, their website had nothing but the word dick on it. So there's a lot of things you have to be careful for. Unfortunately, some people are just not nice people and they just want money.
Okay, thanks.